Here's a pan of my workspace. And here are my note cards. Sports. They have been a highlight of many Americans' lives, including myself. I've always enjoyed watching them and keeping up with what was going on. And I did this until around March of 2020, when coronavirus shut down all sporting events across the United States from it spreading so fast. So in this speech, we're going to talk about how COVID-19 was able to put a stop to all the sporting events, how the sporting events and organizations have changed their regulations so that they can play now, and finally we're going to talk about how these new regulations have affected how the players are playing their sport. So you may be asking yourself, how exactly did COVID-19 stop sports? Well, according to Johns Hopkins University, they came out with an article called U.S. Coronavirus Cases Surpass 1,000, which is up tenfold from the previous week. And in this article, they talked about how on March 10th, 2020, there were 1,000 cases and 23 deaths in the United States. This rapid increase, and along with this new CDC coming out with new guidelines such as social distancing at the time, it was only a matter of time before sporting events realized that they just couldn't have big gatherings of people if they wanted to stop the spread. And now that we have an understanding of what COVID-19 is and a little bit about that, we have to delve into how professional sports went into somewhat of a panic at this time. And what can help with that is we can get an inside scoop from the Philadelphia Inquirer, who came out with an article in May of 2020 where they actually had reviewed and interviewed different reporters who had done articles in March of 2020 about how COVID-19 was affecting them at the time. One reporter stated that on March 9th, I wrote a column that the NHL and the NBA were planning on having their games on the following 2 days, and they were just recommending that fans didn't show up to abide by social distancing. Unfortunately for these leagues, by March 13th, all games and organization games from NBA to MLB had been postponed or canceled completely. And what happened, the reason this happened so fast was because none of the organizations had any time to prepare for COVID-19, so they all just decided that the best way to stop the spread at that time was to stop the games completely. But that also may make you ask yourself, why are the games coming back now then? If they had to stop so fast then how can they play now? Well, one reason is because now they've had so much time to prepare, they have a lot of new guidelines, such as all the players have to wear masks, and they have to try to stay quarantined from the outside world while they're playing in their specified sports. And another reason, the league that's done the best at staying quarantined would have to be the NBA. And then the reason is because they created what's called the NBA bubble. And according to Tad Haslett from the Sporting News, he wrote an article that was published on August 26th about how this bubble actually worked. And in it he stated that every NBA player or manager that was needed to play went into quarantine on July 7th of 2020. And they have been in quarantine and they'll stay there until October 12th. And doing this and only having these players interact with each other and not the outside world has put a stop to almost all COVID-19 cases in the NBA, unlike other leagues who didn't do that, and there's still COVID rises at this moment in time. And another reason that they had to come back is because there's a lot of money in sports. So without them coming back, The ESPN, along with CBS, they published an article saying that if the sports hadn't come back, it would be a $12 billion loss in merchandising and live TV contracts and stuff like that. And another thing that would happen, if the NFL hadn't come back, that number would have almost doubled. So now that we know why sports had to come back, we can also talk about how they've been affected, which is really because now that there's no fans allowed, it's put a big impact on a lot of teams, such as like the teams that really thrive on fans are really struggling this year. But it also has impacted individual sports, such as golf. Take Tiger Woods, for example. When he plays in a tournament, there's always hundreds of thousands of people. But when he played in the US Open a few weeks back, there was 0 fans because of quarantine. And this had led people to speculate that since there was no fans there to help cheer him on and give him good energy, he didn't play good whatsoever in this tournament. And people have also speculated that that's the reason some teams this year are not playing all that great. So in conclusion, today we learned that COVID-19 put a stop to all sports so fast because of how quick it was spreading. We also learned how they have come back with all their new regulations to help slow the spread and keep players safe. And finally, we learned that without the fans being there, it might have had an impact on how certain teams and players have played their sport. But hopefully, if we all stick together and keep wearing our masks and keep trying to stay quarantined as much as possible, then we can eventually go back to a normalized sporting season in the following year. And here's a pan of my workspace.